Jakob Werner was elbow-deep in a malfunctioning gravity generator when the universe decided his night shift was about to get significantly worse. The diagnostic readout made no sense, fluctuations in the field geometry that shouldn't exist unless someone had been using the plating as a percussion instrument. And Jakob was contemplating the engineering mysteries of entropy when the alarm screamed. Not the gentle chime that meant someone had forgotten to seal an airlock properly. The full-throated wail that meant imminent death from above. Jakob extracted himself from the generator housing, wiping grease on coveralls that hadn't been cleaned since the previous administration. Through the maintenance bay's reinforced windows, Titan's methane haze glowed amber under Saturn's reflected light. And descending through that haze, like angry meteors with poor impulse control, came ships. Dozens of them. Military configuration, Vrynthi design, extremely bad news. Well, Jakob said to the empty bay, this is suboptimal. He ran for the communication center, boots clanging on deck plating, but the station shuddered before he made it halfway. Weapons fire, precise, surgical strikes that spoke of people who knew exactly where to hit infrastructure for maximum disruption. The lights flickered, backup systems engaged, and Jakob's internal monologue helpfully provided a running commentary on how spectacularly he was about to die. Through the windows, he watched Vrynthi assault craft land with mathematical precision. Soldiers emerged in crystalline armor that refracted Titan's light into predatory rainbows. They moved like a single organism, all efficiency and lethal intent. Jakob's crewmates, Martinez, Chen, the two Johnsons, and Sarah, were in the hydroponics section, 300 meters and 2 sealed bulkheads away. He couldn't reach them before the Vrynthi breached the main airlock, but maybe he could buy them time to reach the emergency pods. Maybe was a coward's word, but Jakob had never claimed to be brave, just stubborn. And currently, very annoyed that aliens were interrupting his shift. He sealed the maintenance bay doors, trapping himself inside with 50 tons of equipment and a plasma wrench that suddenly seemed very inadequate. The bay's security feed showed Vrynthi soldiers flowing through the station like an invasive algorithm, their long, ear-like auditory organs swiveling to track sounds, their weapons held with the casual competence of people who killed for a living. Jakob looked at the plasma wrench, looked at the gravity generator he'd been repairing, looked at the coolant systems, the vacuum-rated bulkheads, the industrial equipment designed to terraform moons. "All right," he said, pulling up the station's environmental controls. "Let's see how you handle human workplace safety violations." Aboard the Vrynthi command ship Infinite Talon, Queen Sarathi watched her tactical displays with the calm of someone who'd conquered 17 worlds. The human Terraform Station was a minor target, strategically valuable for its atmospheric processing capabilities, but defended by a skeleton crew of 5 technicians. Her intelligence reported no military presence, no defensive systems beyond basic hull integrity fields. This should have been a simple acquisition. Humans would surrender or flee. The station would be claimed. Titan would become another Vrynthi holding in the outer system. Clean, efficient, boring, except her soldiers were reporting complications. "Repeat that," she commanded, her ears, long and blade-sharp, marked with scars from 100 campaigns, swiveling toward the communication officer. Squad Leader Vex reports environmental anomalies in Section 7, sudden decompression in Corridor 12, gravity failure in the assembly hall, and the officer hesitated. 3 casualties. 3 casualties from what? Maintenance bay, my queen. Automated systems have been weaponized, and there appears to be a human still inside, actively resisting. Sarathi's eyes, adapted to perceive spectrums humans couldn't imagine, narrowed. 1 human. Holding a maintenance bay against trained soldiers. "Yes, my queen." She pulled up the live feeds from her soldiers' helmet cameras. What she saw made no tactical sense. The maintenance bay had become a death maze. Corridors vented to vacuum without warning. Coolant lines had been rerouted to flash freeze entire sections. Heavy equipment moved on automated tracks, creating barriers and hazards that forced her soldiers into kill zones. And in the center of this chaos, visible on thermal imaging, was a single human, not wearing armor, not carrying military-grade weapons, moving through the bay like he owned it, like he'd built it with his own hands and knew every pipe, every circuit, every way to make it kill you. "Deploy reinforcements," Sarathi ordered. "This human will break, they all break." But hours passed and the human didn't break. He adapted. When her soldiers learned to scan for environmental traps, he switched tactics, using industrial plasma cutters as improvised weapons, creating barricades from machinery, turning the bay's own systems against invaders. It wasn't elegant combat. It was ugly, desperate engineering applied to the problem of not dying. Sarathi watched a soldier get caught in a suddenly activated gravity well, pinned to the deck with 3 times normal force. Watched another stumble into a coolant spray that crystallized their armor joints. Watched this human, this technician, turn his workplace into something that defied every tactical manual she'd ever studied. Casualty count. She asked quietly. 12 dead, 17 injured, my queen. 12 warriors, dead, because of one human with a plasma wrench and apparently infinite spite. For the first time in her military career, Queen Sarathi felt something she didn't immediately recognize. When she finally identified it, the realization was deeply uncomfortable. Fear. She was watching a human fight alone against impossible odds, and she was afraid of what it meant. Jakob's right arm wasn't working properly. Something about the Vrynthi energy weapon that had clipped him an hour ago had done unpleasant things to the nerves, and he was pretty sure at least 2 ribs were cracked. The station's medical scanner kept helpfully suggesting he seek immediate treatment, which would have been great advice if he wasn't currently engaged in the galaxy's worst game of hide-and-seek with alien soldiers who wanted him very dead. He'd retreated to the reactor control room because it was the last defensible position, and because if they really wanted him, they'd have to risk him doing something catastrophically stupid to the station's power core. Jakob wasn't sure if that counted as a strategy or just spite with extra steps, but it was working so far. The Vrynthi had stopped advancing. 30 soldiers in crystalline armor surrounded the reactor room, weapons trained on the door but not moving. Waiting for orders, probably, waiting for him to make a mistake. Jakob's hand hovered over the reactor's emergency purge controls. One press, and the whole station would go critical in 90 seconds. Everyone died. Him, the Vrynthi, and probably several expensive pieces of equipment that Earth's colonial administration would be very upset about. His comm crackled. The maintenance bay's display screens flickered to life, showing an alien face. Female, Jakob guessed, though Vrynthi sexual dimorphism was subtle. Her long ears bore scars that looked ceremonial, and her eyes, too many colors in them, shifting in spectrums Jakob's vision couldn't quite process, studied him with unsettling intensity. I am Queen Sarathi of the Vrynthi Expeditionary Fleet, she said. Her translator rendered her speech in flawless English, though with an odd harmonic undertone. You are the human engineer Jakob Werner. Guilty, Jakob said, leaning against the reactor console because standing upright was becoming negotiable. Though I prefer that guy who's having a really bad day. Less formal. The Queen's ears twitched, surprise maybe. You have killed 12 of my warriors and injured 17 more. Yeah, about that. Do you guys not have workplace safety regulations? Because the number of OSHA violations you committed breaking into my station is frankly staggering. Silence. The Queen stared at him through the screen like he was a complex equation that refused to solve properly. You make jokes while facing execution, she said finally. Would you prefer I cry? I can cry. I'm actually very close to crying. It's just that making jokes uses less facial muscles and my face hurts. My soldiers report you have your hand on the reactor purge controls. Your soldiers are very observant. Gold stars all around. If you trigger that purge, you die with us. Yep, Jakob shifted his weight, trying to find a position where his ribs didn't scream. But you die too, which seems like a bad outcome for everyone. So here's my proposal. You let my crew evacuate safely, and I don't turn this station into a very expensive firework. The Queen's expression was unreadable. You would sacrifice yourself for 4 other humans. Well, when you put it like that, it sounds dramatic. I prefer making sure Martinez gets home because he's got a kid, and ensuring the Johnsons don't die because they're 2 months from retirement, and that would be tragic irony. You are injured, exhausted, outnumbered, and you continue to resist. Yeah, it's kind of my whole thing. Jakob coughed, tasted copper. Look, Your Majesty, I'm just an engineer. I fix gravity wells and atmospheric scrubbers. I'm not a soldier. But I was here when you showed up, and someone had to stay, and apparently that someone was me. So we can do this the easy way where everyone lives, or the hard way where I introduce your fleet to the concept of rapid unplanned disassembly. Your choice. Queen Sarathi studied him for a long moment. Jakob watched emotions flicker across her alien features. Calculation, frustration, and something that looked disturbingly like respect. "My soldiers will withdraw from the reactor room," she said finally. "Your crew may evacuate, but you will remain until diplomatic channels resolve this situation." "Deal." Jakob's shoulders sagged with relief he couldn't quite hide. "And hey, thanks for not making me commit nuclear terrorism. I really didn't want that on my resume." The Vrynthi soldiers retreated, their movements precise even in withdrawal. Through the reactor room's small window, Jakob watched them establish a perimeter outside, weapons still ready but no longer advancing. He slumped against the console, every part of his body suddenly remembering it had been fighting for hours. His comm beeped, Martinez reporting the crew had reached the evacuation pods successfully. Jakob closed his eyes and allowed himself exactly 30 seconds of trembling exhaustion before forcing himself upright again. The standoff had just begun. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. 3 days. Jakob had been trapped in the reactor control room for 3 days, subsisting on emergency rations that tasted like optimistic cardboard and water recycled through systems he'd personally installed, a fact that made drinking it psychologically complicated. The Vrynthi maintained their perimeter with mechanical precision, rotating guards every 6 hours. They didn't speak to him, didn't acknowledge him, just watched with those multi-spectrum eyes that probably saw him in wavelengths he couldn't imagine. But Queen Sarathi called him every day. The first call was ostensibly about negotiation logistics. The second was about resource management, ensuring he had adequate supplies. By the third day, Jakob suspected she was calling because she was trying to figure him out, like he was a particularly stubborn equation that wouldn't resolve. "Your government and mine have reached preliminary agreement," she said, her image crystal clear on his display. "Joint territorial administration of Titan. Your safe passage is guaranteed in the treaty." "That's great news," Jakob said, prodding at his bandaged arm. The medical kit's auto-suture had done what it could, but he'd need proper treatment soon. "Does this mean I can stop living in a reactor room? Because the ambience is terrible. 0 stars would not recommend. You make jokes constantly, even now injured and isolated." "It's either jokes or screaming, and screaming uses more energy." Jakob leaned back against the console. "Besides, humor is how humans process existential dread. Didn't your intelligence briefings cover that?" Sarathi's ears angled forward, curiosity, Jakob had learned. "Our intelligence indicated humans were fragile, weak, quick to surrender when faced with superior force." "Yeah, well, your intelligence was written by someone who never met a human from the outer colonies." Jakob gestured vaguely at himself. "I grew up on Europa. You know what Europa teaches you. That giving up means everyone in your habpod dies when the ice cracks. That stubborn isn't a personality trait, it's a survival mechanism. That sometimes the only thing between you and vacuum is refusing to accept that you're already dead." The Queen was silent for a long moment. "You are not a soldier, you have no combat training, yet you held off 50 warriors. I had home field advantage, and a really good understanding of industrial safety violations." Jakob smiled tiredly. "Also spite, never underestimate spite as a motivational force." "My soldiers fear you now," Sarathi said quietly. "Not because of your weapons or your tactics, they fear what you represent. If an ordinary human can do this, they wonder what your warriors are capable of. That's the thing, though. I'm not ordinary. Every human you'll ever meet is extraordinary in the ways that matter. We're all carrying forward because stopping isn't an option. We're all fighting things you can't see. We're all—" Jakob paused, searching for words. "We're all just trying to make it through the shift, you know." "I do not know," the Queen admitted, "but I am beginning to understand." The call ended, and Jakob was alone again with the reactor's quiet hum and his thoughts. 2 days later, the diplomatic resolution was finalized. Jakob was cleared to leave. But Queen Sarathi requested one final meeting, in person, on the station's observation deck. Jakob limped there, every step a negotiation with his protesting body. The observation deck offered a panoramic view of Titan's amber atmosphere and Saturn's rings beyond. Breathtaking if you had the energy for breathtaking. Queen Sarathi waited with a small honor guard. Her soldiers watched Jakob with expressions he couldn't quite read, wariness mixed with something that might have been respect. She was taller than he'd expected, her crystalline armor catching the light in hypnotic patterns. "You look terrible," she said. "You should see the other guy. Oh wait, 12 of them are dead. So yeah, I win the looking terrible competition." Jakob managed a weak grin. Your Majesty. I have a question, Jakob Werner. When you sealed yourself in the maintenance bay, you had time to escape. Why didn't you run? Jakob considered the question, looking out at Saturn's vast presence. Because someone had to stay, and I was there, that's it. No grand philosophy, no heroic motivation, just someone had to, and it was me. Most beings would have fled. Most beings didn't grow up where I did. Most beings don't understand that sometimes courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being absolutely terrified and doing it anyway because the alternative is worse. Vrynthi studied him with those alien eyes. My species will remember this. You have changed how we view humanity. Great, can you remember me as that guy with the really effective plasma wrench technique, instead of that terrifying human who probably has 17 backup plans? Because I'd like some mystery in my legend. The Queen's ears twitched, amusement Jakob had learned to recognize. I offer you something unprecedented, a Vrynthi honor designation, reserved for warriors who have earned respect through impossible odds. Jakob blinked. I'm an engineer. You are a warrior who fought alone and made an army retreat. Accept the honor. Jakob accepted, not because he felt like a warrior, but because he recognized it for what it was, a bridge built from mutual respect born in conflict. As he boarded the transport leaving Titan, Jakob looked back at Terraform Station